Alright, so recently it was announced that Dead by Daylight will be adding Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul, so I decided now was probably a good time to check out the Tokyo Ghoul game I got off of Steam a while ago. Tokyo Ghoul is a pretty big series for me. Was the first anime I watched, and the first one I finished on my own. And yeah, because I remember a group of us in college when Re was airing and the manga was coming to an end, just diving into some deep conversations that were a lot of fun about the series. I didn't know much going into Call to Exist, other than it wasn't the typical arena fighter that Bandai Namco has a reputation of producing out of the various anime they have the license for. Instead, got a bit of a beat 'em up here with some minor third-person shooting. It's okay. It's acceptable. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it unless you're a big fan of the genre or Tokyo Ghoul. It plays it pretty safe, doesn't really do anything too crazy or interesting. At the same time, though, it was almost nostalgic for me in a way. I don't know if it's because it's been so long since I've interacted with the franchise or this type of game in this genre. It reminds me a lot of like the Nickelodeon or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle beat 'em up games from the mid 2000s. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It was kind of fun to just, kick back, relax, and, mindlessly play this game. Gives you a different sort of appreciation for, all sorts of other games, if that makes any sense. And for what it is, it's fun. The only thing from a gameplay perspective that I didn't like is that, at least in the campaign, there wasn't really any sort of major death mechanic. Like if you die, a teammate will respawn. Or I'm sorry, you'll respawn or a teammate will revive you. And I don't know, I wish there was some sort of penalty, whether there was, there was a couple of tough boss fights, particularly the owls and the second Arima fight when he starts teleporting all over the place. That, I don't know, I think it would have been more interesting if there was kind of, a checkpoint. Maybe you had to take off half or a third of the health on the boss without dying, or if there was, you lose some of the currency and collectibles that you obtained during the stage if you die, or just, even if there was like a score or just something, And maybe there was and I just didn't notice, but if that's the case, it really should have been more noticeable. Campaign mode does follow the anime. I was actually a little disappointed. I was kind of hoping that they'd maybe not do Rude and go based off the manga for the second part of original Tokyo Ghoul, but they didn't do that. At the same time, this probably wasn't the best means to consume that content. I mean, granted, throughout you unlock different, character bios and event summaries and that sort of thing. But I don't know, they're neat, but I don't really know who they're for. I feel like a lot of people either are already aware of the story through the other mediums or are in for a hell of a lot of reading, since it's a really, in the story, just a quick basic rundown of I think there's 9 different major battles that there are levels based on. Something that's kind of ironic, though, because the current first anime series, if you're unaware of, the second season of Re, it had the same episode count as the first season, but they had to go through double the amount of manga chapters. So it was rushed. It's a bit of a mess. I mean, personally, I got caught up on the series from just looking over the wiki a lot and eventually reading the manga once I got caught up for, the rest of the series that was left at that point. And it's just kind of funny because there's actually the most, like out of the 9 campaign levels, the season that actually has the most levels is the second season of Re, which is, it's just funny because that's almost the exact opposite of how it actually kind of worked out, with it kind of seemingly getting the least attention in comparison with, how much they had to cover there. Another complaint I have, though, is the unlockables. There's like a huge chart with like 100 plus items, and I went through the single player campaign. You saw me right there do a little bit of multiplayer at the beginning of this video with some bots, so I tried some of that stuff out too. And at the end of the game, out of, like I said, 100 plus items, I only unlocked the ability to replay the campaign missions in multiplayer mode, plus 1 or 2 playable multiplayer characters, teammates, cosmetics, weapons, 1 or 2 of each of those categories. So I had such a small percentage, and it's admittedly a little frustrating when you feel like you kind of got most of what you can out of the game and to have only touched a small fraction of unlocks. I mean, maybe a lot of it's multiplayer based because it was, a lot of multiplayer items and such, but I don't know. Survival mode was fun, but there's only 2 maps, and I only have 1 unlocked. I didn't feel like redoing the campaign. In battle mode, you can't play with bots, and no one's playing this game anymore. And I don't know, if I at least, unlocked some more of the weapons and that, I probably would have done a few more rounds of survival or something just to, check out the different abilities and animations you get with them. The way they kind of split up the campaign with a single player and multiplayer iteration is pretty weird too. Like, I can imagine a lot of people just kind of picking up this game and just wanting to play it with, other friends who are fans of the series or genre. And I'm not 100% sure because I did the single player campaign first, but to me it seemed like you have to do the single player iteration first before unlocking the multiplayer one. Once again, not 100% sure. Maybe I'm wrong and you can just start at the multiplayer campaign and just go all the way through and unlock them, one after another like you would in the normal campaign. But I don't know, it just seemed kind of unnecessary to split it up. I mean, right here in this level, in the background right here, from my gameplay, you got 4 different characters here. And hell, it would also be cool if you can switch up your character too while you're at it, keep things a little fresh. And I don't know, they could have had some generic characters, or maybe they could have added someone who was associated at that time in the series with the playable character at that point, even if they weren't necessarily in that battle. Or maybe you can just unlock characters throughout and rotate through them at your own discretion. You have a set of customizable characters too that you could have used, or I don't know, I guess that's kind of similar to just using generic characters, but yeah, people will appreciate the customization, I guess. Or I don't know, mix them together, have a randomized option on top of your saved one. I don't know, at this point I'm just kind of spitballing. Like I said, I'm just not really sure why they sort of went the direction they did there, other than to, potentially pad out the game unnecessarily. The multiplayer variations are like slightly different, I guess, too. Like, it's the same level, but you can select any of the characters or teammates you have unlocked. And they also sprinkle in, I only did 1 multiplayer campaign mission with bots, but they also add in just random boss fights in the middle who can, be pretty much anyone. There are some that are mandatory, some that are not. And I don't know, I just felt like it dragged on. I don't know if maybe they went a little too far with the boss fights, or if it just came down to my frustration of repeating myself when that's not something I normally like to do. I don't know if it's just me either with the customizable characters, but they're in 3 classes: Ghoul, Investigator, and Quinks. And I just feel like ghouls are at a bit of a disadvantage. Granted, they can recover more efficiently. They just need to pick up a health item as opposed to the other classes that need to wait a few seconds to use said item. But at the same time, investigators and quinks have access to several different grenades that all, have pretty decent uses. I forget what their power thing is called in Tokyo Ghoul. The thing that, normally comes out of their back. But it's like, even if that was a little more powerful, Quinks also have access to it. So still at least puts them at a disadvantage against them. But I guess investigators might also have an issue there then too. And then they don't really have access to a good secondary power as opposed to Quinks and investigators who can use multiple weapons, or in Quink's case, a weapon and their back power. I'm sorry. Was it like Kakune or something like that? I don't remember off the top of my head. And I'm admittedly a little lazy and backing out of this recording now to find out. But yeah, I overall had a decent time, but this definitely isn't for everyone, I feel like. Not sure if it particularly got me more or less ready for Kaneki and Dead by Deadlight, but we'll find out soon, and hopefully we'll talk about that too. I normally don't like to make promises because sometimes I get distracted, and who knows, it'll be months later and I'll be like, oh yeah, I finally got around to Dead by Daylight. Hopefully that's not the case, but you never know. But it's at least my intent right now to get to it soon.